Good. So let's start. My topic is stock appreciation. I think it's called stock appreciation rights, SARs, not to be confused with the virus that came before COVID. Stock appreciation rights, they're essentially a type of stock compensation. That's not, I mean, I haven't come across it much. I've come across it once and it wasn't an issue. Stock appreciation rights are essentially a type of equity grant made, at some companies that provides the holder of those rights, they can profit just on the appreciation of the stock, right? So over a period of time, if the stock right now is at $10 a share, we want to give you a right that entitles you to the appreciation of that stock. So, and it could be a cash grant after. I mean, it could be compensated in form of cash afterwards, or in a combo of cash and stock, or settled stock. There's different ways of putting this together, but essentially, I'd say the most common one is a cash settled SAR. So let me give you a solid example. You have the stock of Apple, which is trading right now at 170, and they give you SARs, and they say 10,000 shares, or the equivalent of 10,000 shares at 170, and they have a vesting period of let's say 4 years, 25% on each one, and you can exercise it after it vests, essentially, and the appreciation, let's say, goes to 200, then therefore you made $30 of gain multiplied by the amount of kind of phantom stock that you received, and that it becomes income, and it's given to you in the form of cash, and you have to pay taxes.
Got it. So if we stick with the cash settled side, this is a kind of just like a profits interest.
Yes. I like it. This is a much better way of saying it. Yeah, it's a profit interest.
It's equity comp because it's tying your comp to performance of the stock. But it sounds like at the time of grant, how the stock is trading and what the macro environment is really like your baseline for stock appreciation rights. Where the stock trades today is incredibly important to whether these will be worth anything.
The good part here is similar to any stock options, a grant, there isn't much that happens from a tax perspective. But the main difference is here, and this is what it's pretty interesting to me at least, is that at vesting, normally RSUs and regular stock, if it's restricted stock, when it vests, it usually, RSUs particularly, when it vests, it becomes yours. And so as a result, there's a tax consequence at vesting with RSUs. So you have no control over that. With SARs, you actually have to pay taxes at exercise, on the spread, right, between a grant and whenever you exercise it.
Interesting. So in that 4-year grant idea, you could delay, you could grant a quarter, you could vest a quarter of those in the first year, right? After year one, a quarter of them are vested. You have the choice to exercise that or not. You could delay that and say, no, I actually think the stock's going up more. And I have other tax reasons, right, to do this in 2 years instead of this year, and delay the exercise and keep accumulating unexercised stock appreciation rights for future exercise.
Remember that at exercise, that spread is taxed as W-2 income, I believe, ordinary income.
Definitely.
Right. So, and then let's say you exercised it in year one or year two, 50% of it in year two, and then you sell it in 2 years. The appreciation from then on is capital gains, whether long-term or short-term, depending on the holding period.
Got it. So that would be a stock settled SAR.
Yeah.
Or equity settled SAR.
Yeah. And from the employer perspective, this is an interesting part because I always like to see what the employer perspective is. And the employer takes a tax deduction at the time the employee realizes the ordinary income part. So the IRS always wants, hey, if I declare, if I have to book my income from a tax perspective, then the company gets its deduction at that time. So they want the timing to match. So think about vesting, right? Normally RSUs, it's the same thing with RSUs though. Some of them vest from a time perspective, a time-based service requirement, right? Like 3, 4, or 5 year. But some of them also vest on some sort of performance obligation, like, hey, you need to increase EPS, 20%, and then this vest as well, or an ROE or some sort of market condition, like Elon had, like the market cap has to be X quantity of billion before you can get more shares. I think that's where they're used more, because I don't see them as much as like the regular staff employee. They get mostly, staff employees get ISOs, non-qualified stock options, and then RSUs. That's kind of like the bread and butter.
The package, yeah. Yep. And it seems like this is probably only for public companies. This would be a very weird thing to do in a private company.
Correct.
Or impossible.
Yeah. Well, there was one more thing, right, on the impact on earnings per share, which is kind of important, right? Which I think is something that I'm actually like a little bit pissed at tech companies, because the amount of shares that are growing, like there's so much stock-based compensation that they have excluded from the EBITDA calculations. They call it always adjusted EBITDA, right? The earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. That's like the standard EBITDA calculation. But then they use adjusted EBITDA and they take out stock-based compensation, because the companies say, well, we gave a lot of stock at the beginning of when we were, forming the company in the beginning, and now it's finally vesting, and all the, employees are selling it. It's going forward, we're going to give much less because the company has matured. The problem is that they don't. The stock-based compensation has continued to increase overall. And many companies report, they have positive EBITDA, but only if you show the adjusted one, which is excluding the stock-based compensation. But truly, stock-based compensation is now part of regular compensation. People will not join your company if you don't offer, a stock part of the stock package. If you're not settling the award, the stock appreciation rights if you're doing cash settled, it doesn't really dilute you, I believe, because you're paying just cash. And so it doesn't increase your EPS, your share count. And as a result, companies, like when they're reporting, since everybody's reporting adjusted EPS numbers, excluding stock-based compensation, they wouldn't be able to exclude stock appreciation rights if they're cash settled. And as a result, I think that's the main motivation for companies to staying away from SAR.
Because they can get tricky with the other stock-based comp.
Yeah, if everybody else is reporting adjusted from stock-based compensation, they're essentially excluding a big amount of employee cost. And then with SARs, with cash settled, you can't exclude it because it's going to be embedded into your salaries and wages.
Today, I want to talk about, first of all, FIRE. I feel like you and I have talked about FIRE a little bit before. The movement, we'll call it a movement. It's an acronym, stands for Financial Independence, Retire Early. And it's people who want to stop working. So they save a lot of money and hopefully invest a lot of money. And they calculate the amount of money they need to save to be able to quit their job all the way. Today, I want to introduce a couple funny little sub movements within FIRE, many of which have their own subreddits, believe it or not, which is pretty funny. So FIRE is the big broad category, and within them, a couple funny ones that I found. The first one is lean FIRE, and I would argue that lean FIRE is what most people think of. It's like probably what you associate FIRE with. It says here, individuals seeking lean FIRE plan to live off an income of less than $40,000 a year in retirement, and oftentimes considerably less than that. So this is the most hardcore of the hardcore non-spenders, right? Trying to live off as absolutely little as possible, probably trying to get to early retirement as quickly as possible. So a super minimalist one would be 25 grand a year. So if you did the 4% rule on 25 grand a year, you only need to have saved.
I spend 25 grand a year in food these days.
You only need to have saved $625,000. And then you could 4% rule, 25 grand, and ride off into the sunset.
Incredible.
Lean FIRE. What do you think about that?
I can't do it. I can already tell you that
I can't do it.
I literally spend I probably spend like $200 to $300 a month, a week. I would say in food.
Okay.
I would say that includes also the food for my newborn son, the formula.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Obviously, that goes away. I'm not going to buy him formula when he's 25, but still, it's just not possible. Gas costs, cars. Whew. What does the insurance cost me? Things like $1,100 per car
Per year.
per year.
And how many cars do you have?
2.
There you go. You got to do some budgeting, dude, if we're going to get you in the lean fire.
Yeah, I'm not going to make it a lean fire.
The next one, if you invert lean fire, what would you call the opposite of this?
Fat fire.
Fat fire, dude. That's the next one. Again, this blog post that I'm referencing here.
I love the word fat fire. Sounds like, fat tire
funny,
almost.
Right? Yeah, it does. It does. So a common benchmark here is you're living off an upper middle class income in retirement. So 100K of spending is the number here. So on the 4% rule, that's $2.5 million saved, and you could get to 100K here. Obviously, this is going to take longer, and it's going to, but the trade-offs are much less, right? For most people, most Americans, I think, if you're able to actually spend $100,000 a year, what is that per month? $8,600 a month? Does that sound right, or do I have that wrong?
How much per year? Right. You said
$100,000 a year if you're spending that.
Oh yeah, it's 83.
33.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so an $8,333 a month budget sounds a little bit more reasonable. Is that something you could make work even with 2 kids?
100%. Yeah. Spending that amount is easy like that. I mean, I can probably do that. Ideally, the mortgage would be paid off, and then I could get that. I would have to move in that low tax environment. Low property tax. Because here in Westchester, at least in New York, property taxes are like 2.5-3% of the value of the house, and that's just to pay for the schools. So, if you can live in a place where it's almost zero amount of property taxes, then you probably make that work so easily.
I would say an interesting one here that will break any fat fire plan, at least at that number, is private school. I don't know of anywhere where private school.
There's no fire that works.
There's one, and it's the next one. It's called Obese FIRE. Obese FIRE. They call it 5 to 10 million in the bank.
Oh, morbidly obese fire.
Morbidly obese. Yeah, I don't know what that 50 million in the bank. But yeah, 5 to 10 in the bank. You're doing Obese FIRE. And
they call it Fire. Mo Fire.
Mo Fire. There you go.
Yeah.
Morbidly obese fire. Yeah, I think that's private school. That's serious lifestyle.
That's not fire anymore. No, it is fire.
It is fire. Yeah. If you stop working and you turn that capital base into income for you and your family, I think that counts, man. You're still fire. It's just obese fire.
Yeah.
You're probably not relating to most people in the fire subreddit with that much money. My question for you, Gabe, and I already know your answer, but I'm going to ask you anyway. If you got there, let's say you made an incredible investment and were able to net $7 million off of it, would you retire early from the work that you're doing now?
I love working. I love helping out people. I love working. I love being busy. I wouldn't know what to do. I can't do exercise all day.
I knew that answer already.
Yeah,
but I had to ask you.
I would do videos all day. No.
I would do way more videos.
Yeah,
that would be fun.
But I'm all into production. Mo Fire.
Mo Fire. Morbidly obese. What's the number on that? What's the net worth?
I don't know. Let me actually look at my retirement calculator here.
All right, 30,000 times 12 times 25 is 9 million. See, that's still you're not morbidly obese. You're just obese fire.
Well, $240,000 a year in spending, is that Mo Fire?
No, that's just obese.
Obese. What's Mo Fire then?
Dude, that's what I'm asking you. It's got to be over. It's a lot, man.
It has to be like spending $500,000. What do you think?
Yeah, let's do 40,000 a month.
So I'm right now this age. I want to retire. Should I retire today? Is that the idea?
Yes.
Yeah, I only need 17.34 million in the bank.
That's Mo Fire, your new definition.
Yeah. The truth is that if I had $6 million today, I would be able to do it.
Mm-hmm. Right, mathematically. But the mathematics don't actually matter that much. What do you think? My opinion is that they don't. And that most of these barriers are psychological to people actually just spending their time the way they want to. The job thing is really hard for people to get over.
Like spending time outside of the job.
Yeah, or job as identity is a really strong thing too. People have a strong sense of identity tied to the work they're doing.
Yeah.
I also had a client conversation a couple of weeks ago in which a very successful guy mid-career talked about wanting to know his financial independence number, not so much for early retirement, but because he says he would behave differently at work. His work behavior would be different, knowing that he could, for instance, take a controversial stand up for himself, knowing that if the consequence came, right, if someone got really upset with him and he lost a job, that he and his family would not suffer as a result. His goals would not suffer as a result of that. So that FI number can really change how you feel about the work you're doing too, which I thought was an interesting take. Moving on, we now have an extra one, Morbidly Obese FIRE. A couple more I want to tell you about that I think are interesting. Coast FIRE. I really like this one. Coast FIRE means spending the next handful of years saving as aggressively as you can. So you're a super aggressive saver. And then you pull your foot off the gas pedal and let compounding work for you for your working career. So you have kind of periods. You have a period of really high saving and getting that portfolio to a size where compounding can really work for you. And then you either don't work as hard or you continue the job that you're doing, but you just spend more. You stop that savings rate being so high and let your investments kind of do the work for you. I think that one's an interesting one because it involves kind of shifting gears.
Personally, didn't do that one, but I think looking back, I probably could have easily done that one. I was working 24/7, right? So I had no spending, no time to spend money.
Yeah.
And so I was saving a lot of money. I wasn't just smart about the investing at that point. I was super young.
So that one of these, that's the one that makes sense. You like Obese FIRE and Coast FIRE so far.
Yeah, Coast FIRE in terms of, whereas now, right, it becomes very hard to save when you have two young kids, right? They're not independent. You need kind of like a nanny or daycare, and like it's expensive.
Or a spouse to stay home.
Yeah. Or it becomes a very expensive proposition. And so at the end of the day, Coast FIRE probably makes more sense if you plan these things ahead. Problem is nobody knows what the hell did. Who, age of 20, you don't even know who you're marrying.
Yep.
You don't know how many kids you're gonna have. It doesn't depend on you.
Correct.
You don't know when you're having those.
Yep. Last one here that's worth talking about is Barista FIRE. Can you guess what Barista FIRE means?
Not drinking coffee, like doing coffee at home.
No. I like that.
You're not saving $2 a day.
No, Susie Ormond, millennials advice. No, Barista FIRE means that you switch from a job that's earning you a lot with a high savings rate into getting a job just for the benefits. So for instance, Starbucks, being a Starbucks employee comes with health insurance.
Oh.
So taking a barista-like job just to get some base employee benefits, which is a huge problem with FIRE in general, is the lack of insurance.
So it makes FIRE more feasible for some people.
And it gives you something to do.
That's important. That's a good reminds me of the person who told me like, yeah, I stopped working because like I could, but then I decided to take it up on acting so I could just get the insurance from the guild, right? Like it's something like that.
Yeah. Yep. That's Barista FIRE. So you can really step down in terms of the intensity or the demands of your job. Maybe. I mean, I'm not saying being a barista is easy, but you could ostensibly step down or sideways. Keep a sense of camaraderie, keep some work that you're doing, but actually be just a wealthy person or semi-wealthy person working at Starbucks. I think that's a really interesting one. And I've had clients, I had a client bring this up to me the first time I heard of it. He said, I'm thinking about a barista fire. And I was like, oh, what is that? He's like, yeah, just go, work it. He brought up working at a bookshop, like a Barnes and Noble, just as an employee, is something fun to do because he loves to read, organize books, help people find books. I like that a lot.
Yeah. Barista Fire. I wonder what companies, if they have a list of companies that provide.
I guarantee they did. Search Barista Fire Reddit. I guarantee we'll find a list of
companies that provide health insurance and the hours are low.